My name is Kraus, and I chose to do my topic on marriage. So before I get into my thesis statement, I wanted to talk about how important my family is to me, and that my family members have been my best friends throughout my entire life, and till this day, I could not have asked for a better support system and more love from my family. So when choosing what I wanted to write about, I immediately thought about my family and how exciting it is for me one day that I'll get to have my own family. But before that, obviously I want to have a healthy marriage before I bring any kids into the picture. So going into my thesis statement is, let love be the foundation of your marriage. Getting married is one of the most important decisions a person will make in his or her lifetime. I chose the topic of marriage because I find the concept of marriage interesting, especially when it comes to what to look for when choosing a life partner. I was fortunate enough to witness healthy marriages by both sets of grandparents as well as my parents, so my ideals surrounding this topic are based largely on my experiences. I realize that marriage has changed tremendously in the past decade and divorce rates are still rising. I will refer to books and people as well as my personal experiences and perspective on marriage to relate to the topic of faith, hope, and love, and how each of these comes back to the marriage being based on a foundation of love. So in high school, I'm going to start with trust, and this brings me probably to my 8th grade year. I had a pretty bad heartbreak from a boy that I had a crush on since I was 3 years old, and I lost obviously all trust in him whenever I was a freshman in high school. And we still, like till this day, are very good friends and have talked about dating the past few years, but I knew that I had to end all of that communication because I knew that I could never be with someone that I didn't trust. And so now I get to talk about the interview with my Grandpa Kraus, and let me tell you, my Grandpa Kraus is a man of very few words. Very German, does not talk about lovey-dovey stuff, no feelings involved, but this gave me the perfect opportunity to talk to him about his feelings. So whenever I asked my grandpa how he felt about marriage, he paused for a little bit, and then he started to say, fidelity, bonded by your word, willing to share, and all these things come back with love. He said, when I think of my wife, I value her opinion, and I think of her as being an integral part of the union. And I also asked him, is trust important in a marriage? And he said, oh my, yes. And he paused for a little bit and said, maybe that's what love is. So whenever I interviewed my Grandma Kraus, she started talking about how teamwork is really important and how you can't really focus on just yourself anymore. Like there's a lot of selflessness that's involved in a marriage. And this brings me to a quote that I found in a book, and this was a lady named Whitney. She was 75 years old, and this is in the book of 30 Lessons for Loving, and it states, she stated, you have to forget the me factor. It's compromise and team effort. You have to say, we have a problem. Can we talk about it? Learning to work together and making it a team effort is one of the most important things you can do in a marriage. But today it's very difficult because the me factor becomes much more important than the we factor. What worked for us and what I'd recommend to young couples is working together, having the same goals and values, wanting the same things out of life, and being willing to negotiate if they differ. So now I'm going to go on to faith. What really has changed my life a lot is going through depression in high school. I found faith whenever I was in Lake Sunapee one summer. I went for a swim with my Aunt Dana and his mother and my mom, and they started talking to me about God and how they feel about God and what has made them stronger in their lives. And this summer I really started focusing on that and praying and trying to, those little awkward talks that you just kind of act like you're talking to your best friend, and I really felt a connection and I accepted God into my heart. So with God's help, I was able to open up my heart again and trust that if at some point I were to feel the pain of heartbreak or any pain at all, I was going to be just fine because I always had a support system. So now I go on to love. This interview was my Grandma Jane. She is 83 years old and she was married for 53 years. And the first thing she said about marriage was, I recommend it. My Grandma Jane and Grandpa John had one of the strongest loves imaginable. They couldn't have loved and supported one another more. Always, and one of the things that sticks out the most when I think about them is they always had a twinkle in their eyes, and they always held hands, just always holding hands. And so till this day, I still make sure to ask my Grandma Dawn and Grandpa John all the time, and I still get to see that little twinkle in their eye. And these are my references.